Now, this is something he's been waiting for. My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother...
Princess Anne has always been the royal family's silent force, dutiful, unwavering, and fiercely private. But when she finally spoke, no one saw it coming. Her words sent shockwaves through the UK, leaving even the most devoted royal watchers stunned. The media erupted, headlines blared across every platform, and the public was left asking, what had she just revealed? Was it a challenge to King Charles, a defiant stand against royal tradition, or something far more personal? At the heart of this storm is a bitter inheritance dispute, one that threatens to strip Princess Anne of something she holds dear. The Queen's will left many unanswered questions, but Anne's statement changed everything. What did she say? Why was it so controversial? And could this rift shake the royal family at its core? To understand why this shook the UK, we need to step back and look at Princess Anne's life and legacy. Princess Anne was never destined for the throne, but she carved a legacy of her own, one built on duty, resilience, and a relentless work ethic that set her apart from the rest of the royal family. Born in 1950 as the second child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she entered a world where her future was dictated by royal tradition. While her older brother Charles was groomed for kingship, Anne was expected to play a supporting role. Yet, from an early age, she proved she was anything but ordinary. Unlike many royals who embraced the glamour of their status, Anne was different. She never sought public adoration, nor did she indulge in the privileges of royal life. Instead, she became known as the hardest-working member of the family, dedicating herself to a rigorous schedule that often outpaced even the monarchs. She attended thousands of official engagements, championed hundreds of charities, and took on responsibilities that others hesitated to accept. It wasn't about status for Anne, it was about service. Her no-nonsense attitude and sharp intellect made her a formidable presence in the royal family. While Charles spent years preparing for the throne, Anne built a reputation as the family's backbone. She took on causes that truly mattered, focusing on humanitarian work, equestrian sports, and military service. As a skilled horsewoman, she became the first British royal to compete in the Olympics, proving that she was more than just a figurehead. Beyond her public duties, Anne's military connections cemented her status as a dedicated royal. Holding honorary ranks across various branches of the armed forces, she carried out her duties with precision and discipline, earning deep respect from both military personnel and the public. Unlike Charles, who was often criticized for his introspective and philosophical approach, Anne was pragmatic, decisive, and unshaken by controversy. She didn't seek the throne, nor did she lament her place in the line of succession. Her loyalty was to the institution, not the title. Yet, for all her dedication, she remained one of the most overlooked royals. She never demanded attention, rarely spoke out, and avoided the scandals that plagued other members of her family. This made her a figure of quiet strength, someone who commanded respect without seeking it. While others in the royal circle enjoyed luxury, Anne lived a relatively simple life, prioritizing duty over indulgence. But despite her lifelong service, Anne faced a harsh reality when her mother's will was revealed. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away, the world expected a carefully planned distribution of her vast wealth. Yet, what followed left many stunned. The Queen had accumulated a private fortune estimated at hundreds of millions, including personal estates, valuable jewelry, and rare artifacts. But when the details of her inheritance surfaced, one thing became clear. Princess Anne did not receive nearly as much as people thought she would. The bulk of the Queen's estate went to King Charles III, a move that followed royal tradition. As the reigning monarch, Charles automatically inherited the Queen's private residences, including Sandringham House and Balmoral Castle. He also gained access to a portfolio of investments, artwork, and personal treasures that had been carefully preserved over decades. The reason behind this was practical. By passing everything to the next monarch, the royal family could avoid a hefty inheritance tax that would have otherwise reduced the fortune significantly. For Princess Anne, the story was very different. Despite being one of the most dedicated and hard-working members of the royal family, her inheritance appeared modest in comparison. She did receive sentimental items, certain pieces of the Queen's jewelry, personal letters, and other heirlooms with deep emotional value, but when it came to property or financial wealth, Anne was largely left out of the grand equation. One Sunday evening, she had already made a life of independence. never relying on royal wealth for comfort, but many wondered why she was overlooked. Some believed this was simply the way the monarchy operated. The Queen had to prioritize the continuity of the crown, ensuring that Charles inherited the wealth needed to sustain the institution. Others, however, felt it was unfair. Anne had been one of the Queen's most trusted confidants, standing by her side through decades of royal duties. While other members of the family enjoyed their privileges without much effort, Anne worked tirelessly to uphold the monarchy's reputation. The fact that she received so little in return sparked debates across the UK. The public reaction was mixed. Supporters of tradition argued that Anne had long understood how royal inheritance worked and had no expectations of receiving great wealth. Others, however, questioned why someone who had given her life to the royal family was left with less than she deserved. Unlike Charles, Prince Andrew, or Prince Edward, Anne had built her role through sheer determination rather than royal favour. And yet, when the time came for the Queen's wealth to be distributed, she seemed to be sidelined. But one property stood at the centre of controversy: Gatcombe Park. For decades, Gatcombe Park has been more than just a residence for Princess Anne. It has been her sanctuary. Nestled in the Gloucestershire countryside, the sprawling 730-acre estate has served as her private retreat, away from the rigid protocols of royal life. But now a looming question casts a shadow over its future. Does Anne truly own Gatcombe Park, or could King Charles reclaim it? The history of Gatcombe Park dates back to 1976, when Queen Elizabeth II purchased the estate for her only daughter. At the time, it was seen as a generous and practical gift, a home that would allow Anne to build her own space within the royal fold. Unlike some royal properties tied to the Crown estate, which remain under the control of the monarchy, Gatcombe Park was classified as private property. This distinction meant that, at least on paper, Anne had full ownership, but in the world of royal inheritance, nothing is ever that simple. The estate quickly became a reflection of Anne's personality and priorities. Unlike the grandeur of Buckingham Palace or the historical weight of Balmoral, Gatcombe Park was functional, private, and tailored to her love of the countryside. It became the heart of her equestrian pursuits, hosting competitive horse trials that drew elite riders from across the country. More importantly, it was the home where she raised her children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tyndall, both of whom maintain a deep connection to the property. But with the Queen's passing, the legal and financial status of Gatcombe Park came into question. Since it was originally purchased by the monarch, some speculated that it could fall under King Charles's control. Historically, properties acquired by the royal family are often absorbed into the Crown's assets, regardless of who has lived there. If this were to happen, Anne's claim to Gatcombe Park could be weakened. Some experts argued that Charles had the right to reclaim it, though such a move would be highly controversial. What makes this situation even more complex is the financial burden that comes with the estate. Maintaining a vast property like Gatcombe Park is no small feat, and it requires significant funding. Unlike Charles, who benefits from vast royal resources, Anne has long managed the estate through private means. However, with the potential for inheritance tax and legal complications, questions began to arise. Could Anne afford to keep Gatcombe Park? Would Charles demand control over it? And if forced to choose, would she be willing to fight for it? This led to a looming financial crisis, one that could cost Anne everything. Princess Anne has never been one to complain, but behind the walls of Gatcombe Park, a financial crisis is brewing, one that could strip her of the very home she has cherished for nearly 5 decades. The reason? A looming inheritance tax that threatens to leave her with an overwhelming financial burden. If she cannot navigate the complex legalities of royal wealth, she may be forced to make an impossible decision: fight to keep her estate, or watch it slip away. In the United Kingdom, inheritance tax is one of the strictest financial obligations placed on estates. Any inheritance exceeding PS3 25000 is subject to a hefty 40% tax. Given that Gatcombe Park is now valued at approximately PS15 million, the tax bill could reach a staggering PS2.8 million. For most individuals, such an amount would be crippling, but even for a royal, this poses a significant challenge. Unlike King Charles, who benefits from the sovereign grant and Duchy of Lancaster income, Anne has far fewer financial resources at her disposal. The Queen's strategy of passing the bulk of her wealth directly to Charles had one clear advantage: it exempted the estate from inheritance tax. As the reigning monarch, Charles was able to inherit everything tax-free, but for Anne, there is no such exemption. If Gatcombe Park is classified as part of the Queen's private estate, the tax must be paid, and it must be settled within 6 months of the Queen's passing. This tight deadline raises a crucial question: how will Anne come up with the funds? There are several potential solutions, but none of them are simple. One option is for Anne to sell off portions of the estate to cover the tax. However, doing so would mean breaking up the land she has spent decades preserving, and it could permanently alter the property's historical and sentimental value. Another option is to establish a trust, placing the estate in the hands of her children, Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips, to shield it from further tax burdens. But this, too, comes with legal complications and requires careful planning. Zara and Peter, despite being the children of a princess, were not given royal titles at birth, making them free from many royal obligations. But would they step in to help their mother secure Gatcombe Park? Zara, an accomplished equestrian, has deep ties to the estate, using it as a base for her training and competitions. Peter, though less involved in royal matters, also has a vested interest in preserving their family's legacy. If the burden falls on them, it could reshape their financial future in unexpected ways. The pressure was mounting, the numbers were unforgiving, and the public was watching closely. And then, Princess Anne broke her silence with a statement that stunned the nation. For weeks, speculation ran wild. Would Princess Anne accept the fate that seemed to be closing in on her? Would she fight for her home, or would she quietly step aside? The royal family, known for its silence on personal matters, had given no clear answers. But then, in an unexpected turn of events, Princess Anne finally spoke, and her words sent a shockwave through the United Kingdom. Standing before reporters at an official engagement, Anne's response was as sharp and unfiltered as the woman herself. When asked about the looming inheritance tax on Gatcombe Park and whether she feared losing her home, she didn't hesitate. "I have never needed luxury, only stability. If that is taken away, then perhaps the system is flawed." With those few words, she did something no royal had done in years. She openly questioned the way wealth and inheritance were handled within the monarchy. It wasn't just about Gatcombe Park, it was about a much larger issue. Unlike King Charles, who inherited the Queen's vast fortune tax-free, Anne was being forced to find a way to pay millions just to keep what she had always considered hers. The unfairness of it all was clear, and her frustration showed. The media exploded. Some outlets praised her for speaking up, calling her the only royal brave enough to challenge the system. Others saw it as a subtle rebuke of King Charles, an unspoken accusation that the monarchy had left its most loyal servant without the means to protect her home. Was Anne finally letting her true feelings slip? Did she believe Charles should step in to help? Support for her grew rapidly. Across social media and news programs, commentators debated the impact of her words. Many pointed out the glaring contrast between Anne's financial struggles and Charles's immense wealth. Some called for reforms, arguing that inheritance rules should be adjusted for dedicated royals who had given their lives to the crown. Others insisted that Anne, despite her years of service, was still bound by the same rules as any other citizen. Within the palace walls, the reaction was more measured. King Charles remained silent, offering no public response. But behind closed doors, sources reported that tensions had risen. Charles had always respected Anne's work ethic, but her words had placed him in a difficult position. If he stepped in to help, it could be seen as favoritism. If he ignored the issue, the public outcry could grow. Other royals, including Prince William and Queen Camilla, were said to be privately discussing how to handle the situation. Had Anne intended to challenge the monarchy, or was she simply speaking her mind? Regardless of the answer, her statement had shattered the image of unity within the royal family, and this wasn't the first time royal inheritance had caused controversy. Princess Anne's inheritance battle may seem unprecedented, but history tells a different story. Royal disputes over wealth, property, and status have plagued monarchies for centuries. When vast fortunes and legacies are at stake, even the most powerful families find themselves at odds. Anne's struggle over Gatcombe Park is just the latest chapter in a long history of royal inheritance conflicts, some of which ended in quiet resignation, while others tore families apart. One of the most infamous cases was that of Edward VIII, the king who abandoned his throne for love. When he abdicated in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, a divorced American socialite, he not only lost his royal position, but also his financial security. Stripped of his income from the crown, Edward relied on private wealth and financial arrangements negotiated with his brother, King George VI. Yet, his exile came with tension. His demands for money put a strain on the royal family, and his relationship with his brother never fully recovered. His situation echoes Anne's in one key way. When it came to inheritance, even a former king was not immune to financial uncertainty. Queen Victoria's descendants also saw their share of inheritance disputes. After her passing in 1901, her vast personal wealth was distributed among her children, but the process was anything but smooth. Some royals were left feeling shortchanged, while others received far more than expected. The issue extended across Europe, as Victoria's descendants were married into nearly every major royal house, creating tension over who was entitled to what. The lesson was clear: inheritance in royal circles is rarely just a private affair. It carries political weight and shapes alliances for generations. More recently, Princess Margaret, the younger sister of Queen Elizabeth II, faced her inheritance controversy. Unlike Anne, Margaret was known for her lavish lifestyle, and when she passed away in 2002, her fortune had significantly dwindled due to personal spending. However, questions arose over whether she had received her fair share compared to the Queen, as Margaret's inheritance was much smaller. The monarchy's structure ensured that Elizabeth, as the sovereign, controlled the vast majority of wealth, leaving Margaret financially dependent on royal allowances and personal investments. Her story underscores a reality that Anne now faces: royal siblings rarely receive equal portions, no matter their contributions to the family. The common thread in all these conflicts is simple: the monarchy's financial system prioritizes the reigning sovereign, often leaving other members of the family with far less. Some royals, like Edward VIII, challenged the system and paid the price. Others, like Margaret, accepted their limited inheritance but struggled to maintain their financial independence. Anne, however, stands at a crossroads. She has neither the recklessness of Edward nor the extravagance of Margaret. She is practical, disciplined, and fiercely dedicated to her role. But history suggests that her chances of changing the system are slim. If past cases are any indication, she will either have to find a way to work within the rules or risk losing Gatcombe Park altogether. With all this tension, what does the future hold for Princess Anne and her estate? With Gatcombe Park hanging in the balance, Princess Anne faces a defining moment. Will she fight to protect the home she has cherished for decades, or will she accept the fate dictated by royal tradition? The battle over inheritance is not just about property, it is about legacy, fairness, and the unspoken tensions within the royal family. As the dust settles on her shocking statement, speculation is mounting. Could Anne challenge the system that has favored her brother, or is her fate already sealed? Legally, Anne's options are limited. The Queen's will was designed to maintain royal stability, ensuring that King Charles inherited the wealth necessary to sustain the monarchy. Challenging the will would mean taking on the very institution she has loyally served for decades. While there is no public evidence that she intends to contest the will, some legal experts believe there could be room for negotiation. If Anne can prove that Gatcombe Park never intended to fall under the monarchy's direct control, she may have the leverage to keep full ownership. The most likely path forward is through negotiation. Anne and Charles have maintained a respectful relationship over the years, and despite their differences, Charles recognizes his sister's dedication to the royal family. If she approaches him privately, could she persuade him to make an exception? He has the power to offer financial relief, restructure estate obligations, or help secure tax exemptions for Gatcombe Park. However, doing so would set a precedent that other royals might attempt to follow, which could complicate the Crown's financial structure. This is where Anne's children, Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips, could play a crucial role. Unlike their royal cousins, they were not given official titles, allowing them greater financial and personal independence. Zara, a successful equestrian, and Peter, a businessman, have both built careers outside the royal fold. If needed, they could step in with financial support or legal strategies to help secure their mother's estate. But would they be willing to take on the burden, knowing the high costs involved? There is also the possibility that Anne might take a drastic step regarding her royal duties. She has never sought attention, nor has she relied on royal privileges for personal gain. But if the monarchy does not support her in this battle, could she distance herself from it entirely? Unlike Prince Harry, who made a dramatic exit from royal life, Anne's withdrawal would be far more subtle: fewer engagements, a quieter public presence, and a clear message that she refuses to be treated as an afterthought. One thing is certain: this battle is far from over. Princess Anne has always been a pillar of strength within the royal family, devoted, tireless, and unwavering in her duty. Yet, despite her lifetime of service, she now finds herself at the center of an inheritance battle that raises uncomfortable questions about royal wealth and fairness. Her shocking statement exposed a truth that many had suspected, but few had dared to say aloud. The monarchy's system of inheritance is deeply unequal. The contrast between Anne's situation and King Charles's vast inheritance has fueled debate across the UK. Why should one sibling inherit everything, while another is left to navigate financial uncertainty? Does service to the crown count for nothing when it comes to securing personal stability? These are not just personal concerns for Anne, they reflect a larger issue within the monarchy itself. This dispute could set a powerful precedent. If Anne fights and wins, it may open the door for other royal family members to challenge the traditional distribution of wealth. If she loses, it sends a clear message. In the royal hierarchy, loyalty does not always guarantee security. As the situation unfolds, one thing remains uncertain. What will Anne do next? Will she stand her ground, demand fairness, and fight for what she believes is right? Or will she accept the reality of royal tradition and quietly move forward? Let us know your thoughts. Should Anne fight for her rights, or is royal inheritance simply unfair?